Good evening, everyone. The topic for discussion today is collective bargaining. Before we go into this topic in labor law, let's also understand what bargaining is. A simple example for this would be when we walk into a shop, we try and ensure that we get it at a best price. Any product for that matter, we try and ensure that we get it at the desired price, probably the price that we know already exists and which the seller should give it to us. Sometimes it would be a shoot in the dark kind of a bargaining where we know that by the way we bargain, the shopkeeper would agree. Sometimes the bargaining fails too. Now let's understand what collective bargaining means. In the same manner, if you have gone to the shop, probably with two or three people, and all of them know that the price should have been lesser, and you do it collectively, the effect is better. So, in the same manner, when we take the topic of collective bargaining in terms of wages or labor, trade union becomes very important. Let's look at the principles, let's look at the definition, and then dive into the topic to understand the advantages and disadvantages of collective bargaining. The term collective bargaining was coined by Sidney and Beatrice Webb in their work History of Trade Unions. Here, the Encyclopedia Britannica defines collective bargaining as negotiation between an employer or group of employers and a group of work people to reach an agreement on working conditions. If negotiations are between an employer and a group of his work people, the dependence of the work people on the employer for their job weakens their bargaining power, and therefore collective bargaining is more usually understood to be the negotiation between one or more trade unions and an employer or group or association of employers. Now, we always go back to Black's dictionary when we look at law concepts. It defines it as a negotiation between an employer and organized employees as distinguished from individuals for the purpose of determining by joint agreement the conditions of employment. What is the objective of this collective bargaining? It is a process in which the terms and conditions of the employees are determined jointly by the employers and the workers. Now, it always is from the standpoint that there is a good understanding between the employer and employee to arrive at an amicable solution or amicable decision for that matter. It requires the determination of terms and conditions of employment through negotiation and always encourages the concept of give and take. That is the essential of any kind of business for that matter. It also understands that it's not confined only to the employer and worker. The state also would have an active role in regulating various aspects of these collective bargaining so that it does not go haywire, it does not go in manners not desired. Now, what is the importance of collective bargaining? Why are we doing this? Well, from an employee perspective, for higher wages, for liberal allowances, for fringe benefits, for economic security, improved working conditions by relevant hours of work so that they are not pushed to work more or are not given enough number of hours and hence wages are denied to them, then superior physical working conditions, the working conditions being more humane, where their needs are taken into consideration, and even sometimes their food and everything is taken into consideration if they are not paid separately for it. Then we also have to understand the limitations of this collective bargaining. The limitations is the freedom of the individual workman. For example, if I as a workman would go and individually want to get a higher salary, it may not be possible because I will have to consult my other workmen folks and go through the union. So that liberty is not available. we also have to understand that statutory provisions under the labor law determines the terms and conditions of employment of workers. The agreement of collective bargaining cannot override the statutory provisions which are provided, like the terms and conditions which are agreed at the time of employment, and also the statutes decided by the state. State enacts various labor legislations for the welfare of the workers and to regulate the industrial relation between the employer and his workers with an aim to achieve a good social and economic justice for all. So that is the idea of the state. So we have to understand that all these gamuts have to be taken care of while going ahead and negotiating with the employer, or vice versa. The employee being asked to negotiate on certain parameters by the employer. Now, what are the benefits, or what is it that one would achieve by collective bargaining? The collective bargaining between the labor and management achieves harmonious labor management relations. It also has a very stabilizing effect on the society, because you know that for a fact, for sure, you would be getting these benefits if you're part of this organization. So these are written rules and they would be followed because they have been happening over the years. So that kind of comfort level would definitely happen. Then a resolution of conflicts between labor and management at the collective bargaining table would also lead to industrial peace, which is very important for the growth of any industry. In collective bargaining, the employer would collectively employ the workers and would take his or her choices, the workers' choices, to decide on factors, because this is something that we are looking forward to, where there is a peaceful relationship between the employer and employee, and then amicable decisions are made. The fact that it is dynamic is something that we have to understand. It's elastic, dynamic, flexible, manually cooperative. So it's not fixed for that matter. There would be changes required from time to time. So as we know that change is the only constant, so that's a factor that we would definitely consider. Now let's also wind it up by discussing the disadvantages of collective bargaining again, though we did this at the beginning. Collective bargaining would definitely need the influence of the highly influential powers within the union. So sometimes our viewpoint, if we are on the weaker end, may not be listened to. So that's a factor that would happen. So that's something that we know. Due to collective bargaining, wages are increased, and because of the increase in wages, there would be increase in the cost of production. The other weakness is the economically strong party, like we already discussed, would be strong, and the people, generally the workers, would most of the time be losers. So the people who are very strong in the union may end to gain a lot, and the workers may end to lose a lot. So that's one of the disadvantages. And we all know that due to collective bargaining, some of the times there would be lockouts, there would be strikes, which is not good for the economy. So if it is for the good of the workers, and if it is happening in a righteous way, then it would be fine. But if it is just for the sake of a personal vendetta or something which the union has decided, then it could go wrong. Thank you very much for listening to Bindu Zachariah George. I hope you learned few things from a student. Thank you.